What it's about is really Trinity getting to know our neighbours, the people particularly in the locality. And we've done that through talks and through providing the space for people who need it, for residents groups, Vincent de Paul and so on. I'd love to see you here again, the school, students, particularly when, like in this event, you're working with local people and people, for whatever reason, feel excluded. So please do stay in touch, and if there's something you want to do with this local community or work, or you need a space, you're more than welcome to come along.
As we can see in what's going on around the walls about your general activities, and then to see how it's being used today, where a collaboration by our school with All Together for Dignity has come together and has had the benefit of the space. And as Erna said, even just having the opportunity to move in a different space has been kind of enlivening for the students. And to come together and see the fruit of the work of the All Together for Dignity project with the multiple partners and stakeholders of community groups that have generated all of this very rich, critical, insightful visions for us, and critical perspectives and alternative ways of thinking is really, really important. And this space is, I guess, the kind of space we want, where lots of people can come together. So I brought my mother today, and knew that this would be a very welcome space for her, along with so many other people. And again, that multiple generation piece is really, really important, and I saw that as a theme in your work here on the collages. As the head of the School of Social Work and Social Policy, we see our two disciplines of social work and social policy really working hand in glove, and it's in projects like this that we see that coming through, because the work of social policy is to understand what is the kinds of policies that actually achieve a better society, a more livable life. And the role of the social work professional students in our school is that you go into communities and you meet with individuals, and you're often the interface between those policies and people. And you are really well placed to see how these principles and visions play out in people's lives, or could play out in people's lives, or don't play out in people's lives because policies don't work very well. And you can speak back through your disciplinary work when you come back into the university, and you can speak back to your colleagues here through your research, and you make a really important contribution because you have that access to individual lives.
Student group are going to go out in placement next week, and we hope that today will really resource you to make a really good contribution and to keep that bigger thinking piece in mind, that all of us may have had poverty and experienced marginalisation of one kind or another in our lives, or we may be facing it in our future, and that none of us are very far away from poverty, that any of us can experience health issues, health crisis, mental health crisis, lose our job and be in a very precarious way of life. So it's not something that affects people out there, it's a very human issue for all of us, and I suppose that's the spirit that we work together.
My name is David Donoghue. I'm in a way the father of the Sustainable Development Goals. I was the Irish ambassador to the UN a few years ago when the world was negotiating these goals, and I chaired the negotiations with the Kenyan ambassador, and I ended up writing a fair amount of the document, and in particular the pledge to leave no one behind and to try to reach the furthest behind first. The SDGs was the first time that the world decided on a single work programme which would involve tackling poverty at its roots, creating a more sustainable environment, and also having economic policies which were fair and sustainable. So this entire package was called the 2030 Agenda, but within that then you had 17 goals and 169 sub-goals, or sort of targets, which went into more detail about particular areas. But the new thing was that every country in the world agreed to implement the 17 goals, the 169 targets, and the pledges about leaving no one behind, which are actually in a separate declaration. Every country without reservation, so there are 193 countries in the world, every single one agreed to do this. And in the sentence where they said they would try to reach the furthest behind first.
A promise that we in Ireland, I think, have made to ourselves to each other and to the world, to leave no one behind, just as we've seen in the Leave No One Behind conversation series 4, 3, 2 and 1, and we will see in series 5. The SDGs are ambitious, as David has said, but they are not just global ideas, they're actually local responsibilities. They're our responsibilities. They live in our schools, they live in our towns, in our communities, they live in our choices. And here in Ireland, we're showing that real change doesn't only come from government buildings or policies or global summits. It comes from the ground up. It comes from you. It comes from the community conversations that were held that led up to today. To be honest, the SDGs can be a huge mountain to climb. Ending poverty, tackling climate change, achieving equality. But in our honest local conversations, we've learned that support means being seen. And people talked about choice and voice and dignity, and about how real inclusion means having agency over your own life across the entire lifespan, from early childhood right through to old age. People spoke about systemic barriers, poverty, disability, rural isolation, homelessness, discrimination, and about the heavy silence that can fall when your voice isn't in the room. What we also learned was that real change doesn't start with millions. It starts with one person deciding to care, one team creating a project, one school choosing to act, or one community choosing to include, to participate, or to talk. And across Ireland, that's exactly what's happened. Local people are leading the charge. Young people have decided they're not waiting until they're old enough. And communities are not waiting for permission. They, or rather you, are turning the SDGs into real, meaningful, everyday actions.
This project is something incredibly important. It brings the SDGs right into the heart of communities, which we believe is exactly where they belong. So at Concern, we're proud to support this work. It speaks to the core of what we believe in, that lasting change happens when people are at the centre of the process, when their lived experiences lead the conversation. It's been really inspiring to see all of the collages around the room today and the diversity of groups involved in the project, the honesty, creativity and the insight they brought to it. We think that the use of collage is a message in itself, that everyone deserves to be heard regardless of their language, their education or their background.
I like to stress that when we talk about leaving no one behind, we have to remember that behind these words, behind this promise, there are the people who yesterday and today battle constantly against poverty. There is an endless struggle, yet in the midst of this struggle, they are the one who keep standing alongside those who are worse off than themselves. The first community, as Paddy kept telling us, who was homeless himself, when you are down and out, the family is there for you. That's your brother and mine. It is a place where parents pass on their courage to their children, their know-how on how to resist poverty and what they believe in. That's why it's so crucial that families in poverty are being reinforced and protected by institutions, by social services, by the government, for they are a strength and a wall against poverty. The founder of ATD, Joseph Brzezinski, on the 17th of October 1987, engraved these words on the Human Rights Stone in Paris. Whenever men and women are condemned to live in poverty, human rights are violated. It is our solemn duty to come together to ensure these rights are respected. By engraving these words, he challenged us all of us, to gather with and around the most forgotten, downtrodden men, women, and children, to stand alongside them to uphold their rights, and to do it not just once, but over and over again.
I find the day so encouraging because the students, are looking to develop or seeking to develop their experiences and their understanding of the work that's ahead of them.
Yeah.
And to know that people whose lives are very difficult, that are going to be a challenge for them when they become professional social workers, can believe that the people themselves have answers to what's going on in their own lives and what's going on in other people's lives. And I think there's a kind of coming together here of intelligences and care and kind of thirst to do better for people whose lives are very difficult. And I've spoken to some of the students very briefly, and they've liked being here and the work that was done this morning, the creative work that was done this morning, and listening to the people who spoke this afternoon. And I feel this kind of feeling of hope.
Today was the culmination of a lot of work and thinking that went into what does the Sustainable Development Goals mean in practical terms in the lives of people. Particularly people, as the theme is people who are left behind. And it's concretised, I can use that term, the Sustainable Goals. Because sometimes they seem abstract when you read them, but what does it mean in Ireland today, the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly around poverty and exclusion in a very wealthy country? What does it mean? How does it feel? And it's to get the informed voices of people who experience poverty and social exclusion. People who don't feel they can fully participate in society, or facilitated to fully participate in society.
And I think what ATD does is a terrific way of analysing what that should mean if we're trying to overcome the severe disadvantage that a lot of people live with. In the actual SDGs document, we gave examples of groups who are marginalised, who are vulnerable, and it was these who are supposed to be, whose needs are meant to be prioritised by the world.
I think the work that's going on resonates with us here in Unit 18 regarding not leaving people behind, because Trinity is not just a place for those who are studying formally. We welcome everybody in here, whether they're trying to learn English or they're doing digital skills, and it's fantastic to have the students and ATD, so thanks very much for coming. Best of luck, and the work has been great.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate everybody who was involved in the organisation. It was a very memorable day, a very enjoyable day, and I suppose the whole gathering was very inclusive, because we have people who have direct experience of poverty. We have students who are going out to work with people who that would be a very valuable experience for them. And then we had a number of organisations that also with the same goal. And then even David himself, who was here, represents the policy makers, people who actually work in a strategic way and international ways. They brought so much together. I think also the underlying atmosphere, the spirit, was really respect for everybody.
And one of the posters that stood out to me was that the poor are not always their faults. Right? But youthful hope today here is encouraging, because we hear too much bad news on the TV, too much despair, too much misfortune. So spreading the word of hope on all of these posters on the walls is encouraging.
And sometimes with regards to conversations, when we think of a conversation, we think of two people, a group, more than one. But what I learned today really is that the most important part of talking is listening, and I think that's something that is coming out more and more so in all of these conversations, and has even come out more so in SDG conversations around the number 4 series. And we're looking forward now to, as we ramp up towards 2030, these are gathering momentum. And there is a groundswell of movement from the ground, from people on the ground within communities who are driving the SDG forward. So what began as a kind of a notion around of hope, in this Jubilee year of hope, we're banking on a groundswell to deliver on the SDGs. People in communities, young people, people who have been left behind, people whose voices up to this point haven't been heard. These are the people who I think are going to lift up the SDGs and bring them home for 2030.
Emphasis you put on the community, the work in the community, and how we can address extreme poverty through the work in the community to make feel the people that they have a place and make them able to speak out and tackle issue of the society with the people. And I was very impressed for the atmosphere and the feeling that yes, there is always special.
Yeah, we're absolutely delighted as the School of Social Work and Social Policy to be involved today, to be working with the ATD community in the morning with our students, working on what the Sustainable Development Goals might mean to them as they go out onto their community development placements. And then this afternoon, having the students and ourselves as part of the launch was a real privilege to be here. And I think for me, the standout is to keep the goals alive and to, rebuild momentum continuously in terms of how we can translate the goals into action in small ways and in bigger ways in our everyday lives and in our work as well. So I thought it was a very inspiring day and very happy to be part of it.
Young people part of these events, I know they were here for their studies and for their school, but it's very interesting to make ATD known for younger people. And I am happy to see that ATD Force World is great, alive.
It's been a really, really good day. It's been nice to see the project and see all of the colleges, and it's really important to us to see that everyone's voice is being listened to, everyone's voice is being heard and valued. So it's great and it really links in with our values.
Our project, Leave No One Behind, led by ATD Ireland. We had students from Trinity. We had a workshop in the morning. I got involved in the workshop, so it was a great moment. I enjoyed it and it was very inclusive.
And we were able to explore what it meant to be left behind and what SDGs are most relevant for community practices and what they are the collective actions needed from us to make a society that is more inclusive.
I believe, said Tracy at the end of her testimony in 2002, I believe that things will change. I know it.
Leave